Hearthstone Grandmasters continues with series number 2 here in day number 2 of week 3. Coming up next, we have Sand versus PNC. If you're just tuning in, we saw Muzzy and Monsanto go to the wire down to game number 5, and Monsanto was able to take that win after the Shaman was unable to get through. What are we going to see in this series? Looks like the bans are pretty streamlined, once more leaving up Paladin, Shaman, Druid, and Hunter. At least according to the website. We'll see if that is the case. Looks like the graphics has confirmed that.
Yeah. A lot of differences, though, between the lineups that we're seeing in this matchup compared to the last one. Saiyan does have Totem Shaman as opposed to the Galakron Shaman. He also has Token Druid instead of Spell Druid, which, a lot of the name is kind of used interchangeably because even the Spell Druid still relies on tokens to get the job done. But Saiyan's Druid has, the Blessing of Ancients and Garden Gnome and Force of Nature plus Aeroponics, that kind of thing. It's a much more get on the board fast and early and capitalize on boards and keep growing a board over time instead of the Spell Druid, which usually goes for big bursts and big swing turns with Kael'thas. So it's got some different matchups. I think it's better against some of the faster decks like Shamans and Paladins. But it's weaker in matchups where the decks have a lot of removal in the early game, and you don't have those big, massive, resilient boards that you can make with Soul of the Forest and Gift of the Wild like you see from the Spell Druid. So just some slight differences. And I'm excited to potentially see Totem Shaman again. Obviously, there's a chance that Saiyan doesn't play it in the series, but those were some of the most fun games I've watched in competitive Hearthstone yesterday. Watching Gallon play the Totem Shaman like 6 times in a row, trying to get wins with it in 2 different series. So I'm excited to see Saiyan play it this time around if he does.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least if we come down to Totem Shaman versus Galakron Shaman once more. But I do like the observation that you're making. Token Druid is definitely one of the more interesting takes right now to bring for this 10-deck format, largely because people will be trying to target Druid, so you go one step above and make this deck harder to target while giving it an opportunity to still build the traditional game plan for Druid, which is formulate a board that's really hard to deal with and present a Savage Roar lethal at every juncture of the game, starting from the mid-game. So we'll see what ends up happening. Looks like I heard a Rexar to start things off, so Hunter going to be represented on both sides. And Saiyan's going to try to see if he can get this win, not only, of course, to improve his chances for top 4, but to avoid Muzzy in the elimination match, because once more, it would mean that Saiyan and Muzzy would have to face off for a spot in top 4. In week number 1, Saiyan had to beat Muzzy for the top 4 spot, and that's what's kind of got Saiyan into that upper echelon of points heading into week number 3. And then if the same happens today, Muzzy will almost be in danger of not making top 8. We'd have to see how the rest of the bracket play out, but Saiyan would lock it in. This is the Highlander Hunter Mirror for PNC and Saiyan. However, as you can already tell, there are some differences in some of the cards. Crazed Alchemist coming in as some secret tech here. Highlander Hunter also a deck for PNC that's performed very well in the first couple weeks here.
Yeah, he got many of his wins in last year's standing last week with the Highlander Hunter. Most of his wins came from this deck, whereas he struggled with almost all of his other decks. So this is the one. And now we're in Conquest, so a little bit different. You only win with it once. But obviously PNC 5-2 throughout the Swiss, so he's finding success with his other lists. But yeah, there are some differences. Both players notably did include Waste Warden in their lists. So they do have the tech, the anti-Druid, and kind of splash anti-Murloc Paladin. They both have Hungry Crabs. It's just kind of in that 2 to 4 mana range that they have those differences. Like a Scale Rider for Saiyan, and like you mentioned, the Crazed Alchemist as well. Also, an Overconfident Orc in the deck.
Okay. So
some slight differences.
Yeah, more utility, less like raw power.
Sure, yeah.
Crazy Alchemist does actually grab Saiyan some significant tempo onto the board because it doesn't die to the Hogsteed as easily, and he can set up a Desert Spirit that can most likely pick apart whatever PNC develops. And the Stormhammer eliminating the Crazed Alchemist. So it's a soft win here.
Also, the Desert Spear into Faces Corruptor combo is
classic.
Classic. One of the best Hunter combos there is currently, because you get the free minion generation. You can play Faces on curve as long as you have that weapon equipped.
That is correct. PNC doesn't have a very clean turn 4, so you can use tracking here. While he can, couple of reasonable neutral minions, Bone Chewer, Brawler, and Escaped Mana Wraith, but best card here is Diving Griffin for the purposes of keeping up against Saiyan's tempo. It's about to develop here.
Yeah,
Does he see it though, right? Like, Diving Griffin also just arguably is the best card there.
Yeah. And it would with the Hogsteed gone pull Zixer out 100%. Well, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza in the Highlander deck is one of the best from Primordial Explorer. Still a ways away.
Right.
But PNC is on the play this game, so he would get the first Dragon Queen Alexstrasza down. And he does have a decent curve coming up on things with Rotten Drake if Saiyan were to just play a big minion here. Diving Griffin, because it will pull the Zixer guaranteed, will give him, just kind of plays to make, kind of fill his mana curve. So I like this curve, and Saiyan's kind of the one playing the reactive game plan right now, which is not where you want to be. So, just kind of looking through these turns, if Saiyan does go for the Coin Faces Corruptor here to try and win back some tempo on the board, Rotten Drake not only allows the Stormhammer to swing again, but also gives PNC the board again.
How about a new eye? How about a new eye?
Yeah, Rotten Drake here is super good tempo and keeps the train going, and PNC, outside of that measly turn 4, they still got to develop the Primordial Explorer, or the Emerald Explorer rather. This curve is looking real good. Now Saiyan doesn't know how to fight back just with the tool that he has. He's already used his coin, and Mana Saber isn't it. Looks like Saiyan's gonna at least receive 9 more damage next turn, and that might be the tipping point. We might not even get to the Alexstrasza phase of this game. PNC might be able to just end the game through pure pressure.
I've just realized over the past 2 weeks, nobody beats PNC's Highlander Hunter.
Yes, only PNC beats PNC's Highlander Hunter.
That's so true. So true. It just seems like in every game, even when his curve is not like the greatest curve in the world, he just always comes out on top, and it's just...
Well, I think that's
where... It's the deck, Dan.
I honestly think that's where PNC's strength lies. One, he's able to recognize and build like good lineups. I think that's something that has consistently been his strength in Grandmasters, is that he has a good lineup for the field. I don't really think he brings bad decks. I think the second thing going in his favor is that he kind of understands the decks, that what they're trying to, their overall game plan, and he's able to really focus on some of these more narrow strategies. And sometimes they bomb out, and sometimes they execute incredibly well. And that's kind of what Highlander Hunter is. You just have to really press in and leverage your tools. And in this case, PNC has really good tools. Diving Griffin eliminates the Evasive Fellwing, and the Zixer can get the easy trade.
Diving Griffin wouldn't pull anything out of his deck unless he were to trade the Zixer in and have it die first.
Okay.
So
I'm in favor
maybe he
of that.
goes for a play here where he holds on to Diving Griffin for a turn, plays like Fairy Dragon,
Unleash the Hounds, perhaps.
or Unleash to fill the mana and to save him some damage, and then uses Diving Griffin to pull out Zixer next turn, or just does this. This also works.
Yeah, I think it's too
Pull it out
expensive
immediately.
next turn. That's probably what he's thinking about. Like, he wants to make a 7 into an 8 and 9, and he's got like Waste Warden and Fairy Dragon ready to go.
Yeah. So either way, I just like the play from PNC to trade in the Zigzar to make sure that he pulls Zigzar Prime out of his deck immediately and get value off of the Diamond Griffin. Because that will also just make sure that he has a turn 8 to smoothly transition to Dragon Queen Alexstrasza on turn 9. If the game even lasts that long. Because Saiyan's at 11, and currently he doesn't have a great way to get on the board quickly. He has Swarm Locust, but there's just going to be the 3/1 ones.
That actually sets up a pretty decent Unleash the Hounds into a Fairy Dragon and Swing.
You can also just Waste Warden.
Waste Warden Hero Power also looks pretty good. Or Waste Warden Fairy Dragon.
Oh yeah, Waste Warden Fairy Dragon, because then he gets to get the free swing with the Stormhammer, and then maybe set up for a Unleash Lethal next turn. Yeah. If Saiyan plays just a few minions.
Waste Warden Tech.
Nice.
And that should wrap it up. Saiyan's like, I don't even understand. Like, he just completely everything Saiyan tried to do this game, he got shut down.
Yeah.
And I mean, mirrors can be like that sometimes, where like one player has the right side of the deck and the other player does not. And there are some deck differences, but I don't really feel like they've made any significant impact here. So Saiyan looks dead to me.
I mean, you talk about like the more utility versus raw power, and you could kind of see that coming into play. Just with like the maybe slightly worse potential turn 2. Like, imagine if that Crazed Alchemist was like a better 2-drop.
Right.
That could have made a difference. Because he has pretty weak on-play 2s. He has Crazed Alchemist and Fairy Dragon. Those are his only 2-drops that are actually just playable 2s. So
that's fair.
Maybe it does. Maybe like that because he's focused a lot on utility. Maybe that's it. But I think it was mostly the case of, sometimes, especially in mirror matchups, like being on the play as opposed to being on the coin. A lot of times you're forcing your opponent to react to you, and you just need like the 1 or 2 answers to really stay ahead on board, or at very least stay ahead on health, and then you have more outs later on in the game. So, also just could be a fact that PNC just doesn't lose on a Highlander Hunter. So I don't know what Saiyan was expecting going into the mirror matchup anyway.
That's true. Well, that brings us to game number 2. Very quick game 1, despite Saiyan trying to hang in there as long as he can. Hunter seems to still be a very good queue because it does well against all of those strategies like Druid that takes a while to build up, and just seems to have higher card quality than the Shamans. PNC's his Paladin is a Murloc Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
So, with Hungry Crab in the deck lists here, outside of the Shaman, Saiyan is well prepared for that Paladin list as well.
Yeah. I just want to throw out there, Dan, just as a point to, or just as a follow-up to your point earlier of PNC having like a deck building edge. His version of every deck is my favorite version of that particular deck.
Yeah.
He has the Galakron Shaman with 1 Waste Warden, 1 Hungry Crab, which I think is the right balance for this metagame, and only 1 Flesh Shaper, which a lot of players are running 2. And you can tell that Flesh Shaper is like sometimes hard to use. He has the Ysera Unleashed, him and Nalgidon, as you saw. Nalgidon also qualified top 4 earlier. They have the same Druid list. With the Ysera Unleashed, it gives it like that extra bit of power very late in the game. And we could see over the course of the past 2 days that a lot of Spell Druids have just been running out of gas because they just have the Mount Seller and the 2 Glowfly Swarms and no follow-up beyond that. So... and his Highlander Hunter, which, again, just doesn't lose. So he does have, like, kind of what I think are the most refined versions of each individual archetype that he chose. And that's probably why he's 5-2, right? It's probably why he did well in Swiss. I think it was the same case last week with his lineup. And, that's why we're seeing that level of consistency from him. Despite maybe, the couple missteps that we saw from him last week. So... definitely like his overall deck building this week. And we saw a couple of deck building wins. I think Bunny Hopper in Europe also, I think, just had, at least against the European field, kind of the best lineup. And he had a relatively easy path today in his group. So we're seeing, even in this not very solved metagame, with you having to make creative deck building decisions with some of the less popular classes that are impossible to test on ladder nearly, players are still making these optimizations that are giving them some edges.
Yeah, I like that breakdown a lot. I think that you know, in a 10 deck format, deck building becomes more important than ever. Largely because in Conquest, your weakest link is exposed. However, this is open Conquest, so there is the opportunity to switch out one of those decks that are weaker. We used to call it Shield Conquest when you could protect a deck, TJ. I'm just calling it Open Conquest.
Oh, when was it that we used Shield Conquest?
I believe that was...
I hope you like my invention.
I don't remember. I know we used it for something, but I can't remember what we used it for.
Wasn't it Masters Tour?
It might have been. I don't remember. Oh well, that's my subconscious is working on it.
Oh, was it season 2 of Grandmasters?
Oh yeah, I think it was season 2 of Grandmasters. Yeah, you're right.
You remember because I heard their video explaining it all the time. I have recurring nightmares of TJ explaining Shield Conquest phase to me.
Yeah, well, I just in the recording session for season 1 of Grandmasters, I said tertiary more than I had ever heard it said in my entire life.
Right.
I spoke that word.
You taught me what that word means.
I had to look up what that word meant when I read the script. I was like, what the heck does tertiary mean? Ah, okay. What is the word for a fourth of something?
Quadriary?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know.
Maybe we should create a format where you can bring
quaternary.
3 other decks.
Primary, secondary, tertiary.
Quaternary?
Quaternary?
Okay.
Quinary? Scenary? Septenary? Octenary? Nonary? Nonary? I don't even know how to pronounce all these. Oh, the 12th. Duodenary.
You're a non-honorary.
Dan,
I'm not going to stand for this bullying.
Dan, you're such a duodenary. Grow up.
Well, PNC with his tertiary turn. What could he end up doing here? He has the Sludge Slurper
excellent
and
use.
the and the Devoted Maniac. Thank you. TJ Sanders a Brood. Devoted Maniac would throw him off his curve for the rest of the game because he does have like all these 5 and 6 costs, but it would be the most effective at playing onto the board. And I think what he's really afraid of ultimately is being behind with minion, and Hunter just keeps pressing in for damage.
Yeah.
And I think this is
his curve's gonna be weird.
Yeah, this is a hard decision to make, and this is something that could easily blow up in PNC's face, but I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just dealing with the board, keeping his life total high. If he goes Sludge Slurper and doesn't find a minion that impacts the board, then he rolls into...
Okay, now I hate the previous play. No, I mean, it's results-oriented thinking, but it's like, in the sense that it feels so bad to overload here as the Sludge Slurper, and it feels even worse to just play a vanilla 3/3 and not do anything with the remaining mana crystal. But I think you have to keep your mana open.
Yeah, and I mean, the 3/3 does set up for Shield of Galakron to potentially be able to clear off this Mana Saber. So that's a bonus of this play. And his curve beyond that is okay, right? He goes Shield of Galakron into Corrupt Elementalist. The Box by Knuckles is probably going to be the card that's hard to fit in anywhere, because it doesn't look like he's going to have a turn to really breathe. It's probably going to be saved for a moment where, you know, he's going to get desperate and have to go for Box by Knuckles on something. But, you know, it just feels like he's definitely behind. But Saiyan does have to kind of be careful with his mana usage here, because if he makes a weak play and PNC can answer it, he could end up falling behind easily, especially if PNC is able to max invoke, because he would be Shield of Galakron on 5, Corrupt Elementals on 6. That's a fully invoked Galakron. And so it looks like he is going to play around the possibility of Shield of Galakron on 5, which is just a heads-up play from Saiyan. He says, if I make any other play, I'm very susceptible to losing much of my board to Shield of Galakron and not having a way to deal with it.
And you can see PNC making that tough choice that Muzzy had to do last series. Attacking with just the Bog Spine Knuckles.
Yeah.
Without its effect.
Yeah, well, he'll get a 7-drop next turn, most likely.
Most likely. Almost.
Unless he draws the Desert Hair, Dan. Oh. Because then he has Bogstraw Clacker as well.
It's true. Develops the Zixer and just kind of passes. Holds on to the Dwarven Sharpshooter. This could be a very powerful evolve turn here for PNC.
Oh, that is good.
And TJ, we're kind of overdue for a good evolve from Shaman.
We are. We're well overdue. And this is not only a good evolve turn, it's also a full clear.
Yes. Clear off the Basis Corruptor.
Unless he wants to get these 2 drops.
That's pretty greedy.
The
benefit is he doesn't kill Sixor.
Yeah.
He doesn't kill Sixor, he can't get shuffled into the deck. I think Saiyan's been holding on to this Ingenuity, by the way, because he wants to try to get a chance to get Sixor. Here we go.
Oh, yeah. That's the stuff right there. The Ravenhold Assassin.
Honestly, it's better than nothing.
Well, I mean, it's not really vulnerable to, like, Zephyrus or Varanus in this case. Varanus, he wouldn't be able to do anything anyway. Oh, he drew the crab! So the beasts that he could have hit were the Prime.
Hogsteed?
He doesn't have Hogsteed.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong deck list.
It was literally a 50-50.
Is Diving Griffin?
Oh, yeah, Diving Griffin. All right. So
he was less likely to draw than likely, but I mean, still, he wanted to get something better. I think. Oh, actually, it would have been a good outcome if he got Diving Griffin, because then you would have to play it and then just line up for turn 8.
Yeah, then it would have lined up turn 8, because that's the only other rush minion he has.
Is Saiyan going to play the control role now? He does have Zephyrus as a defensive maneuver alongside Varanus.
That's true.
So he could play a slower defensive style here against PNC.
But PNC has a turn to breathe here, which means that he has the option to go for like a Kronks to pick up the Galakron, because he does have Wade fully invoked in hand. I believe it's at 3 right now with Corrupt Elementalist plus the Devoted Maniac. He could also try and go for like an 8-drop with the Bogstraw Clacker and play that alongside. I guess there's nothing really to play that alongside, right?
It would be a Farsight.
It would be Farsight into something.
And
yeah.
I don't think I like that nearly as much.
Yeah.
I mean, Sludge Slurper can fit almost any curve he chooses to play.
And Saiyan rewarded for holding the Hunger Crab.
Saiyan's like, woo! I knew I should have held that Hunger Crab.
And so that's going to be a 5/6 Hunger Crab, because Scavenger's Ingenuity gave it +2/+2, so at 3/4.
Right. I mean, that is reasonable tempo.
Wait, no, it's +3/+3, so it's going to be 6/7.
Oh, it's a +3. I thought it was a +2/+2.
Scavenger's Ingenuity.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the Hunger Crab. Oh, he draws 6 anyways.
He'd have to trade it all off, and Dan, that Hunger Crab value.
He also has like a Shattered Road Ruin opportunity with Zephyrus, which I think is reasonable as well. But he does know about the Galakron in hand. But he knows that's also not fully invoked.
Okay, hits Shadowwood Ruin, so that's good sequencing, because his crab would have been over 5 attack.
Yeah!
Look at that swing. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Boulder Fist crab.
Boulder Fist Crab. Eat your heart out. Now PNC wants to fully invoke, but now he's behind on the board. The swings, TJ.
Well, I think Evolve's a good draw. He could Corrupt Elementalist and then evolve the Corrupt Elementalist and potentially taunt it if it's big enough to block some damage from the crab.
Right. Because his concern is surviving. But he does have Galakron in hand, and the moment he plays Corrupt Element also puts pressure on Saiyan because he knows that those 8/8 elementals will be on their way.
Yeah.
The Shield, I think Shield of Galakron also fully invokes Galakron because he played one Shield of Galakron.
Yeah. But, like, if he wants to use Mutate here, which it honestly seems like he does, because he needs to, like, build up a big enough board to contest the crab, then Corrupt Elemental is going for a 7 seems better. Also because 7 is the highest chance to get taunt. 7 mana is. Oh, he's gonna hold the evolve. Okay. Wow.
Wow.
Those are some powerful plays.
Oh, finds Scale Lord and Murazon gets to just play more tempo on the board for himself as well.
Yeah. It's a free Shield of Galakron here.
I will act as your scale, Dragon Lord.
And yeah. That's game, I think.
There's just too much pressure here.
Yeah. He could Galakron trade over 1 and then evolve. I guess he could trade over both the 8/8s, but then there's still 11 damage being represented on board. He would take 4. Oh, yes. Oh, he can clear off the Hunger Grab too because he can Hero Power with the Searing Totem.
Yes.
So he can isolate the Scale Lord, actually.
Right, he just loses everything in the process.
Yeah.
Unless, is he willing to be greedy?
I was thinking he could, like... No, because then he'd have nothing to swing his weapon into. I was thinking he could be greedy and, like, go for a King Crush Mutate.
So I was thinking he actually Titanic Lackeys, trades over one of the 8/8s, so he has an 8/2, and then mutates it.
Okay.
And then leaves up the Hungry Crab. I think that's a little bit too greedy, though.
Yeah, because we talked about it last game. There's only 1 9-mana taunt that you can get it.
Well, I mean, just even keeping the tempo on the board. Because my problem with him hero powering is that Hunter just does the same thing. You're basically hoping that Hunter doesn't have a proactive card. And Highlander Hunter has like 28 proactive cards. And like Hungry Crab.
Hey.
So, I don't know, TJ. This is looking pretty dicey. He does end up going for the evolve, but that's not really gonna save him here. That Scale Rider draw is like low-key pretty nutty.
Oh yeah.
Just lets him get that 1 damage onto the Ysera. And now PNC needs something to bail him out here. So there's 1 9-mana taunt. There's also rushers.
Yeah, well, you go for 10 mana with the Mogu Flesh Shaper, which could get like Scrapyard Colossus.
Okay.
He could also Mogu Flesh Shaper Nightmare.
I'm listening.
Bogshock. So he kills off the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza because it'd be an 8/9.
He can still play it by playing the Corrupt Elementalist.
Yeah. So he can still play the Blazing Battle Mage.
Right, he can also hero power.
Oh no, he can't because he would have needed to evolve with the Bogshock. He would have needed to play it like right there.
It's true.
Like my play was Blazing Battle Mage, Mogu, Nightmare, trade over the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, and then Bogshock. And even if you don't hit a taunt, he'd have 1 mana left to Titanic Lackey.
Right. Do you think it'd be worth... Oh, wow. He's going to bank on the Alexstrasza not being able to get through. A little bit risky, but that's what he needs to do to survive. And
he's alive!
Saiyan does have a way to press in for 10 damage. The Zixer Prime is very hard to handle. I mean, that's a lot of stats. And even if PNC managed to clear off everything, he's just dead to a hero power. This is looking lights out.
Yep.
We can see what the Evolve could potentially change, but barring any... Oh, wait! Okay, so that's step one, but step two would be to find a defensive maneuver to survive a hero power and to go beyond that. Like, this block shot clacker would have to, like, specifically get, like, Armor Smith, I guess? No. Yes.
Yeah, armor. Yeah, because he doesn't have to trade anything. Yeah, it would have to be... So he has two chances with Bogshot Clacker. So he wastes Wardens, and then freezes the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza.
And they could
so
evolve the Waste
power, so
Warden.
it has to be exactly Armor Smith.
Right.
Because there's no other like immediate gain outside of Armor Smith in this situation.
Right.
Oh no, but he because he'd be evolving Bogshot Clacker, he would have to get exactly Armor Smith plus a rush minion?
Yeah, I mean, it was low chances anyways, but
Yeah.
that will do it. It was extremely unlikely that PNC was able to pull it back. And even then, it'd be one of those things that we mentioned. He survives, but is he actually going to win?
Yeah, because Sam was at 30 at the end of that game, or it took the only points of damage he had taken the whole game on that turn. But yeah, he would have had to either evolve only one of the 1-drops with Bogshot Clacker and get exactly Armor Smith, and then trade in both, he'd go up to 3, or evolve 2 of the 1-drops and get Armor Smith plus a Rush 2-drop, like or a charge, like Bluegill Warrior or Hench Clan Hogsteed, and then he'd still only be at 3. 3, because he would need to gain 2 armor, because evolving them, he wouldn't be able to attack immediately with the guys, and I get it. So, and even then, Sam would just not play anything, hero power, and then he would lose. So, even with that very slim, crazy out, he was still pretty much 100% dead.
Yep, so that brings us to a tied series. The Hunter's able to get to the win. And now we'll see how the Shaman, Paladin, Druids hold up to each other. Will Saiyan's Tex win, or will PNC's Raw Power win through? Interesting note, too, that PNC didn't just go for full-on streamlined decks. He, too, has a couple of Hungry Crabs, but not as many. Not as many crabs as Saiyan.
Yep.
PNC has only 1 crab at most per deck, while Saiyan has a couple of Hungry Crabs spursed out throughout, most highlighted by his Token Druid. So I'm curious, here we go into game number 3. We have that Druid from PNC up against the Paladin from Just Saiyan. That's a pretty good curve. On Saiyan's side, he has the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, that's kind of the sore thumb, but you can have the Battle Mage coin history buff into Sandwasp Queen, and Druid is going to struggle to remove that.
Yeah. PNC keeping Fungal Fortune's Glowfly Swarm, so a good curve himself, but with a lack of removal spells.
The fires of vengeance
Wow.
burn bright.
Yeah, unless PNC picks up Moonfire, he's not... Oh, okay. There you go. I was like, unless he picks up Moonfire, he can't answer the history buff. But maybe if you're saying you still don't play the history buff here. Oh, it's so tempting. Shotbot is also really good.
Let me tell you a story.
You can tell Saiyan not entirely sold on this game plan either, I think.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, there's also different ways for PNC to remove. You could Crystal Power and Wrath, and well, I guess you could use any kind of assortments of Moonfire to help supplement that kind of damage. Like if you had Crystal Power, Moonfire, Hero Power.
Mhm.
So there's a few ways that Druid could have pieced together removal. Also, if PNC just had bees, you could just destroy the history buff, as we saw in the previous series with Mansama versus Muzzy.
Yeah, PNC does run one copy of bees. Essentially, everything is pretty close to what you'd see in the normal list, except he runs one Power of the Wild, one bees, and in place of those two cards, he runs Ysera Unleashed and a Starfall. So
this
he's
Druid
set
deck,
up for the mirror.
TJ, sorry to interrupt. The Druid deck actually has a lot of 1-0s.
Time waits for no one.
His Druid deck does, yeah.
Yeah, he has 9 pairs of cards and then like a bunch of one copies of stuff. So it's not really reliable when you're trying to draw through your deck, and that's what you get. Ooh my! So the Magic Carpet makes things like the 1-drops that you get from Sandwasp Queen particularly interesting. Skyclaw is the most board presence now. It does make a really nice curve. You have the Shotbot and the Queen next turn, and then you have the 2 Wasps with the Magic Carpet on 5.
Mhm.
And if PNC goes for a Innervate Glowfly Swarm, he's only going to get 4 minions right now. So I think he
all
might
get
have.
challenged.
Yeah, I think
Nearly.
he might just go for Fungal Fortunes in this position.
Yeah. And Ysera Unleashed, even though it's not a great draw, it does make his Fungal Fortunes less likely to hit minions and more likely to fill his hand up with more spells. So that's the kind of upside to it, if you had to find one. The problem is, like, you Fungal Fortunes and then Hero Power down one of these minions, or Innervate Bog Beam seems very weak with a Skyclaw. It would remove like 3 for 3 immediate power and then make your Glowfly next turn better. But you never know what Sand's going to develop behind it. Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
mean,
This seems really, really weak.
as weak as it seems, his other options also seemed weak, and then Sand would develop behind it and still have a check to the Glowfly Swarm, even if it was full, next turn.
Right.
So at least PNC here is like, okay, well, if Sand full trades off this board and, doesn't have too much development, it means that I have a turn that I can Fungal Fortunes and maybe play the long game, which we've seen this matchup go to quite a bit, and PNC has the benefit of having Ysera Unleashed as kind of a finisher. So, oh wow, so now Fungal Fortunes
That's
plus
huge.
Wild Growth is
Yeah.
huge, yeah.
That's a big draw here for PNC.
I wonder.
So Exotic Mount or Kael'thas Sunstrider, the 2 minions left in the deck. I think he's thinking of whether or not he wants to remove this with Bog Beam this turn. Bog Beam Hero Power. It would be sort of in line with the play that he made last turn, which is do anything I can to keep the board in check.
For no one.
Wait for maybe Saiyan to have a weak turn, and that's when he can ramp and Fungal Fortunes.
The thing is, Saiyan's deck is low curve, so it's not like it actually does have a significant chance of whiffing. 5 is like starting to hit its top end.
Ooh, Air Raid. Nice.
Oh yeah, you get to summon a couple of 1/1s with taunt. These are some tough turns for PNC, and I feel like I could be convinced either way. The Fungal Fortunes Wild Growth lines still seem pretty solid to me, but I guess PNC doesn't have faith that his deck will bail him out, and
Yeah.
he doesn't want to just easily lose the board and get snowballed down.
Yeah.
Totally reasonable.
Oh, and the thing I just noticed that we didn't talk about was another reason why the Glowfly Swarm Innervate on 4 was good was because it was a turn before Waste Warden could come down.
Mm-hmm.
So by getting the value out of Glowfly Swarm, essentially clearing the board with it, he dodged Waste Warden with it and can wait till he has a more powerful setup with his second one.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I don't hate the Glowfly Swarm play, or even the Bog Beam. It's totally understandable. I think the Paladin has like one clear win condition, which is like getting onto the board before Druid can set up, and so you're trying to disrupt it. And PNC did have the card draw to back things up. I think he's debating if he wants to Crystal Power and Hero Power, or he wants to Wild Growth for that extra mana crystal. He doesn't have a Kael'thas turn, though. He used all his free cards, so even if he ramps, he doesn't have a guarantee of being able to go off with Kael'thas, so I think he just wants to remove everything on the board. Looks like he's just saying that the next draw is likely to still hit a cheap card, so he can go off there. Wow, not even removing a small minion there. There's a lot to unpack from that turn, TJ.
there really is.
So, first of all, what is PNC trying to go for here? He's trying to save this Crystal Power for a Kael'thas swing term and hope that Starfall bails him out?
Which is going to have to be a big bailout.
Right.
Because now he's going to be going down to 12 health if Satan decides to swing this. He's running out of time. So no swing.
Okay.
Ooh.
Gambit
But no
pays off.
overflow.
No overflow and no board generation, so he does get the free Kael'thas spell, and he can go for the Starfall, but I feel like if you play Kael'thas, you might as well just raw Starfall here, and have your mana free to do other stuff. Like,
Well, it does put a big taunt in the way.
that is true. I mean, maybe I'm just ignoring the fact that Kael'thas goes to a 5/10 minion. It's kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah, and he would be able to isolate the magic carpet.
People are addicted to it.
So there'd be 4 damage represented on board. Sand Wasp that he knows in hand would be only an extra 3. So Kael'thas would not be challenged from what he could see. Obviously, there's cards that Sand could pick up that could allow him to challenge it.
Right.
Like the Librum of Justice.
Oh!
But if he does that, then he has to get rid of this Underlight Angling Rod, which he didn't even swing with last turn.
Yeah. So a little bit. He could swing actually now. He could swing now, get the free Murloc. Wait,
Take the 5.
maybe he doesn't have to choose. If he gets a Murloc Raider, he actually can just kill the Kael'thas anyway.
Yeah. I'd say it's not out of the woods yet, because that's Libra of Justice used, and PNC's going to just slam a Ysera Unleash on the board.
Yeah, that's another thing to actually consider there, which was what if he just like goes up with another big board? It doesn't even have to be Ysera Unleash. It could be Exotic Mount Color.
Yeah, he would have played Overflow if he had it that turn, I assume.
Move quickly.
He's played both Fungal Fortunes.
I think in his mind he wanted to go for the guarantee clear and keep his Magic Carpet.
Yeah.
My
Oh, it's time for Ysera.
Ysera Unleashed. Tough to fight back against that wide board. But Saiyan does have Zephyrus in his deck if he can eventually find it.
He has some time.
A little bit of time.
Not a lot of time, but some time.
Reporting for duty.
And PNC also is getting Glow.
Right. Pretty wide board here, and Drew doesn't have access to things like Swipe.
This is a lethal setup.
Does not find anything. He has the Rising Winds, but if he Rising Winds, hits like 5 dragons and then Gift of the Wild, 5 dragons might push it. Let's just get like 2 dragons.
Or, I mean, even 0 dragons, a 6/14 taunted Ysera Unleashed is still like good enough for this board,
it's just,
right?
It's still possible for Saiyan to just get like the right card to answer it.
It would
I
have
guess
to be Zephyrus.
It would just have to be Zephyrus. Oh goodness.
And now if he doesn't, he might just have to gift here. He does have to gift here.
Yes, because that's his only form of taunt. Because
Yeah,
there
unless-
is 5, 8, 10, 11 showing right now, and his Ysera would survive.
What?
So if he goes for more draw, he has the option to get Dream Portals that get a Taunt Dragon.
No one.
That's one. He could also find removal spells to buy himself like a turn. Like if he picks up the second Moonfire, or if he picks up Wrath. So he had a couple of outs. And maybe it's better to take the risk there? I don't know. Also, if I'm PNC in that situation, I don't think I trade because that
Right.
just puts more damage in.
The Zephyrus, that
Off the
is
top.
lethal. Saiyan can count it anyways. He is lethal on board, but
Yeah,
it's gonna
just
make
needs
sure.
to execute. Yep.
Saiyan takes game number 3 in PNC's Druid. Yeah, we're talking about Druid potentially being Achilles' heel of a lot of lineups. Still very much could be the case here, but for now, Saiyan just happy that his Paladin was able to get a win.
Yeah, he barely skated by on that one. That was
And you know, to PNC's credit, I mean, he was like kind of seeing that late game scenario panning out that way, where
Yeah.
he needed to preserve HP, and he set it up in a situation where Saiyan had to use his removal suboptimally. He lost an entire card in his hand.
Yeah. Lost an entire card in his hand and needed
Needed stuff. He had magic carpet
Libram of
that,
Justice into Zephyrus or the other way around
right.
to be able to deal with those two big taunt minions.
So I like the line that PNC took, and I think that most of the time it works out for him. And kind of what we're saying too, if he had more dragons, that would have given him like perhaps a winning line, not necessarily just surviving, but like if the Ysera was able to grab 2 portals and then gift the wild, and Saiyan didn't draw Zephyrus, then that's like counter pressure, and he could probably just start to win the game.
Yeah.
So you know, I actually felt like PNC got robbed there.
maybe slightly, but you know, you kind of got to put those ones behind you. I think his Druid deck is like less susceptible to getting cornered because he does have the Ysera Unleashed, so additional waves of threats. He also has Starfall, which could be good in the mirror, but we did some testing with Saiyan's Druid versus PNC's Druid, and Saiyan's Druid just kind of bullies it. You have much more consistent early game. You actually have things to play in the early game, and outside of like the crazy Goldfly Swarm super early for full board, then the token Druid usually will run over the spell Druid. But we're gonna see Totem Shaman with a Shield Bearer to protect the
What?
totems.
Argent Squire, Shield Bearer. How many 1-drops are in this deck? 14 1-mana cards. 12 1-mana minions.
So, I like this because we saw how difficult it's been for players to stick things on the board that don't die. Because everything about this deck relies on you having minions and totems that just survive one extra turn. Because you can capitalize on it so well with Storm's Wrath, with Bloodlust, and of course for totems, with the Splitting Axe and Totemic Reflection. So, it's the Shield Bearer, the 1-up Shield Bearer is, you're like, well, that's weird. Even with Storm's Wrath, it's only a 1/5. But if you play that Storm Bearer, or that Shield Bearer, and it protects your 0/2 Healing Totem or Wrath of Air Totem, then you're in business, because that opens up and unlocks Totemic Reflection, Splitting Axe, to try and snowball the game. So it seems like a weird deck, but it's a deck that lives and dies by being able to stick things on board and having things that are very tough to deal with, like the Squire and the Shield Bearer, can give you that consistency of being able to get off board buffs and bloodlusts.
That's right. I'm looking forward to see if this version can work out for Saiyan. PNC playing the more traditional Galakrond Shaman. Galakrond Shaman struggling a little bit throughout today so far. Interesting to me that once more, you know, every time we see Saiyan and Muzzy kind of going at it seems like they are not playing the same decks. They are diverging in opinions, and that makes it particularly interesting for me, given that these two are considered two of the best players that NA has ever had. And particularly to see them differ in opinion so frequently, despite being in the same team, despite living together, is particularly intriguing to me.
Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe they just started disagreeing more in general because they're living together, and that just translated into their Hearthstone gameplay as well.
Sure. I mean, they could be preparing differently together as well. Like maybe Saiyan and Muzzy just say like, oh, I'm going to play this strategy, so better against this half, and you can play this other thing, which is better than that half. They could be, Saiyan, I know, for example, practices a lot with Hunter Ace and those people. And Muzzy used to practice with more like Americas-based practice groups back in the day, like Muzzy and Amnesiac, and
Nostum,
Bob 7, you mean?
The Grand National Champions.
Yeah, Bob 7 and Lead Pain and all of them. That used to kind of be Muzzy's practice group, and now that they're like working together a lot more often and talking about stuff, it could be something that like helps them, right? Like you might think like, oh, they're just like disagreeing. That means they're not working together. No, it actually could be the opposite. It could be that they're able to help open each other's eyes through multiple perspectives, and factor that into their deck building, even though they choose to go separate ways.
Yeah. Oh, and one that we're forgetting that was in that practice group, maybe the most important of all, Chalky.
Oh, yes. Let's be real, Chalky hard carried that group for a long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, no shade to the other people. They also did a great job. I heard that specifically that Lead Paint's data approach was pretty revolutionary for its time. This is, of course, years ago. They practiced together. And since then, some people have chose to move on to pursue academics, and some people have chosen to become a full-time contestant on the Rostular. DJ does not know a clue what I'm talking about.
No, I literally have no clue. But I'm pretty sure like what most of those guys are up to these days, I would not understand in the slightest. So.
I'm sorry. I too kind of get what you mean. Sometimes I'm like, as I'm learning it, because I'm trying my best to understand it. I'm not judging it per se. I'm just trying to like understand what's happening. When I first kind of hear the concept of what's happening, I'm like, I feel like a boomer right now because I don't immediately get it at first. Upon the first time I hear it. But as you get more into it, it's actually quite entertaining. Anyways.
Well, Dan, there's a totem on board.
Yeah, Saiyan sees an opportunity because PNC is very slow to get onto the border. He just totem past. He roped all the way down and passed. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Is PNC afraid to develop because he doesn't want to lose something for a poor value trade? Is he trying to perhaps save the coin for a more impactful tempo swing? Or does he have nothing to play, which is, well, actually the reality of the situation. PNC doesn't have anything good here.
Yeah. The saving grace maybe for PNC is that he has Waste Warden, which, man, Totem is a tag.
Totem is a tag. What a world we live in where Waste Warden can wreck Totem Shaman and cannot answer Treant Druid.
The tech was for something different all along, and nobody even knew it. Yeah, PNC, at this point, it might not even be totems that are his downfall in this game. It might just be Magic Carpet plus some 1-drops that are his downfall in this game.
Half of Saiyan's deck are neutral cards, which is pretty hilarious to me, just to show you what he's trying to do. Like, use a very strong, aggressive neutral package with like a bunch of one drops. Although maybe very strong is overselling it. Use an explosive neutral package with a bunch of these cheap minions, and then use some of that totem core to help supplement it with Bloodlust at the top.
Yeah, because 1-drop is not a tribe tag. Unlike totems.
He could Beaming Sidekick the totem and set up for a Splitting Axe. Looks like he just wants to keep the Tempest alive as much as possible. It is one of the stronger minions on board. PNC's in trouble, huh?
He's in a lot of trouble.
What do you even target?
He can dig in the bag with Dread Corsair plus double mutate for a 6-drop.
Well, Waste Warden, there's 2 elementals on board, but they don't even die. They just take
don't
3
even die.
damage.
Yeah.
Maybe you freeze with the Invocation of Frost, and then trade, and then pass.
And then what are you setting up for, though? That's the problem. You're setting up for, like, exactly a Bogspine Knuckles draw?
Oh no! What if that gets Corrupt Elementalist? Blatant decoy.
Oh! Well, then.
Yeah, so that decoy will summon the lowest cost minion from both players' hands, which happens to be Waste Warden.
The Waste Warden.
That's
Oh,
terrible
no!
for him. Wow, he even finds a resilient minion. And Sam gets to summon Evil Totem.
Goodbye, Waste Warden.
Whoa, this has worked out beautifully for Saiyan and awfully for PNC. PNC can coin Kronks, which does actually nothing except for just the 6 mana 6/6. He already has Galakrond in hand, and the Hungry Crab tech is not going to pay off.
This one is done.
Oh yeah, stick a fork in it, TJ.
Yeah, 10 damage on board. We're saying 5 from the hand. So PNC's not dead yet,
Not dead yet.
but he may as well be, because I'm pretty sure that's the only invoke that he's been able to play. And so the Galakrond next turn will just summon some measly tutus.
Yeah, while Saiyan can summon another 1/1. Saiyan can wait. He can Cobalt Lackey and Argent Squire get the rush off of the Magic Carpet. Might be even incentivized to potentially play the Splitting Axe. I was thinking about it, and in the end, it's still just 6 damage from the hand when he's presenting a lot. And he can clean up a decent amount as well here.
Protects me.
Yep, and still push some damage. And this is a lethal setup.
And
Can he take enough damage off board? No, he can't, right?
he can remove 3 damage off board if he plays the Galakrond, gain 5 life.
Okay, so go up to 15.
And
There'd
then he
be
has
6, 7, 8, 9.
He's Kronks. Kronks next turn to help defend himself.
Okay. So in that case, you would use Galakrond, take out the Scarlet Crusader,
Yes. Yeah, the Scarlet Crusader.
and Saiyan would be 1 off lethal with the Kobold Lackey, right? Because he has 3. He would have 3, 4, 7, 8, 9 plus 5, 14.
Okay.
So
It
it'd
also
be
does mean that he's dead to any direct damage for the rest of the game.
direct damage in Saiyan's deck is the second Splitting Axe, Bloodlust, another Evil Totem that gets a Lackey, Storm's Wrath, Sludge Slurper into a Lackey. It's actually quite a bit. So he did not know about the Kobold Lackey. Oh, the Overload. Oh, but he has Sludge Slurper to overload him. That's exact, right?
The Overload. And he finds another Cobalt Lackey, which is humorous because he didn't have the board space to play it anyways, but
Yeah.
look at that.
So if PNC had traded differently,
Yeah.
he would, just saying, would have been 1 off.
Right. So I think PNC. What's the incentive of trading onto the Argent Squire versus the Scarlet Crusader? Because in the end, you leave up a 2/1 without Divine Shield or a 3/1 without Divine Shield,
Yeah.
and it felt
So-
like it's just
Yeah.
better to trade into the 3/1 there.
It's just, I think, strictly better to trade into the 3/1 there. I mean, it was essentially guaranteed dead because of the
Right.
if we look at panouts only, because Saiyan would have gotten the second Kobold Lackey, which even once PNC had cleared the board next turn with Kronks, he would have been at 1, which would have meant that the second Kobold Lackey, because board space was an issue there. because he needed to play Sludge Slurper to get the extra damage on the Surging Tempest with Overload, and then needed to play the Kobold Lackey with the extra board space, with the last board space.
Right.
But he still would have been dead. But like that was the best opportunity to give him a chance. And even if he doesn't know, which he didn't know, obviously, that there was a Kobold Lackey in hand or the potential of a Kobold Lackey in hand, it was just he left one extra damage on the board. That was just strictly wrong to not remove.
Yeah. So it didn't matter in the big picture, but again, small optimizations. It doesn't matter until it does, and when it does end up becoming the case where you lose because of 1 HP or 1 damage that you could have removed, it is one of the most painful experiences competing in this game, because you're like, wow, I should have just played tighter, even though you can argue 9 out of 10 scenarios it might not matter, but or even further, maybe 99% of the time it doesn't matter, but that one time it does, it stings real bad.
Yeah. But PNC will move down to the elimination match. He'll face off against Muzzy. Saiyan's going to move on to that winners match to face off against Monsanto.
That's right.
So we have that set up. So the initial matches are down for the group, and we do have an opportunity now for Saiyan and Muzzy to both be the players that make it through this group. The Radiance Dream is still alive. If Saiyan goes through in the winners match and then Muzzy just wins out, then they both move on into the top 4. And maybe can meet again in the finals, since they'd be on separate sides of the semifinal bracket. Obviously, they'd like that. It'd be a big win for their team. But still a lot of work left to do for both players, because if either of them lose, then that dream is gone.
All right, so we're going to find out what happens. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get the winners match started for Group B here for the Hearthstone Grandmasters of America. Stay tuned.
Hearthstone Grandmasters is brought to you by T-Mobile, helping you stay connected to what matters most. Learn about T-Mobile's COVID-19 response on T-Mobile.